1980s was a wild time for football, a decade fueled by dynasties and bone-crunching hits. Yet beneath the glory and the rise of legends lurked a darker force. A force that would stain the reputation of legends in the NFL.
I went crazy. Quaaludes, cocaine.
He said he first tried cocaine at a party during his rookie year.
Lawrence Taylor was probably the most intimidating, the most fearsome defensive player.
Whatever I could get my hands on.
They know about the White House.
It's the most scandalous house in sports history.
I remember they used to bring the coke up to Dan Marino.
I left my family, my wife. I left everybody.
But after he left football, cocaine simply took over his life.
Cocaine told me where to go, what to do, how to do it, when to wake up, when to go to sleep.
It was a lifestyle that led to prison.
The New Orleans Saints faced a significant scandal involving cocaine use. It was reported that players were openly using cocaine, even before games and at halftime. This rampant drug culture contributed to the team's poor performance.
And he was arrested for buying crack in South Carolina.
You should shut it down.
Hollywood Henderson, former football star, ex-drug abuser.
Lying on the couch in a fetal position, hugging a pillow and crying.
Pick in the draft, the Indianapolis Colts select quarterback Peyton Manning.
The greatest moment in any athlete's life is the sound of his name being called on draft day. But in the 1970s and 80s, you also made a deal with the devil.
Oh, is he hit? What a shot. Norris Weiss just got wiped out and the pass is incomplete, intended for Dalton. Thomas Henderson comes on the blitz here.
After being drafted in the first round of the 1974 NFL Draft by the Miami Dolphins, defensive end Don Reese had to quickly get accustomed to the lavish, party-fueled atmosphere that now surrounded him. A place where status and alcohol ruled the land. But as the 70s progressed, a drug, long thought to be a drug of the past, had reintroduced itself to the world. A drug that would destroy countless people's lives, including Don Reese.
1974's first-round draftee Don Reese, and became an intimidator wherever he lined up.
It took no time at all for him to become addicted, putting a huge strain on his career, health, and relationships. However, the often fatal side effects from the drug would not come from usage, but attempting to sell it. Now for a quick word from today's sponsor. Life can get hectic, and finding time to prepare home-cooked meals becomes harder and harder. This leaves you at the mercy of fast food restaurants, which charge premium prices and are damaging to your health. That's where Cook Unity comes to the rescue. Cook Unity is a chef-to-consumer platform that delivers freshly prepared, restaurant-quality meals directly to your door. Partnered with over 90 chefs from top restaurants across the US, providing fresh and diverse cuisine, making each meal an enjoyable and unique dining experience. Let's take what I chose for example, Martin's Ecuadorian Chicken by Chef Arthi Sampath. What makes these meals so unique are the fascinating stories behind the dish. Chef Sampath is a New York-based, renowned chef, even appearing as a judge on MasterChef India. And after 2 or so minutes in the microwave, the meal is ready to eat and tastes great. Easily one of the most unique and enjoyable meal service meals I have tasted. To be a part of the Cook Unity community, go to the link in the description now to try Cook Unity and get 50% off your first order of chef-made meals delivered fresh to your door. Don Reese and teammate Randy Crowder received a call from an airline stewardess named Camille Richardson, stating to the two men that she wanted to buy some cocaine. She stated that she needed the money to pay for her sickly mother's medical bills, and after hearing the story, Reese conceded and agreed to make the deal. A decision that would haunt Reese and Crowder for the rest of their lives. They met Camille at a nearby restaurant and were introduced to two interested buyers from Philadelphia. Crowder and Reese were suspicious of the two men. Reese had decided to give the men a sample, And to Reese, it looked as if they were fake snorting the cocaine in the back of the car. Something wasn't right. The men decided to make the final exchange at a nearby hotel, and upon the exchange, policemen burst into the room. One hit me on the head, and another put a gun down my throat. Randy panicked and tried to back off the bed where he was sitting, and they jumped on him and beat the hell out of him. It was a nightmare. In the wink of an eye, we had turned from prominent big league athletes to common criminals.
Former defensive lineman Donald Reese was followed into the courtroom by former defensive tackle Randy Crowder.
Fortunately for the two men, they received a lenient sentencing of just 1 year in prison and were back playing football in the 1978 season. Reese went on to play his best football in 1979, leading the team in sacks and being named the MVP of the Saints defense. Unfortunately, the Saints team of the late 70s was as cocaine-fueled as they come.
Winning 28-19.
After going 2 years clean, Reese fell back into the drug. Nearly half of the Saints roster was on drugs at the time, which made it only too easy for Reese. His downfall would come quickly, coinciding with a real low point for the New Orleans Saints. Winning games when half of your team is regularly using drugs isn't easy, resulting in a shocking 1-15 record. Head coach Dick Nolan was fired, and tensions among players were high, not helped by the cocaine and embarrassment of the on-field performances. Reese took out his anger on another player during a training session, beating him to a pulp. He was suspended for the last 4 games of the year, which was a fitting way to end such a mess of a season. Don Reese was then traded to the San Diego Chargers, where he continued freebasing, even doing it all night before his physical assessment. He would descend even further. Eventually, after racking up huge bills, having guns pointed at him, and having almost destroyed his marriage, Don Reese checked into a hospital to receive the help he desperately needed. The 1984 Saints scandal involved a total of 27 players, casting a spotlight on the dark underbelly of professional sports. However, perhaps one of the darkest and most disturbing incidents would involve one of the NFL's biggest stars.
Thomas Hollywood Henderson lived a wild and fast-paced lifestyle during his NFL career, filled with drugs, parties, and reckless behavior.
Henderson even admitted to sneaking liquid cocaine into Super Bowl 13, even using it during the game in a nasal spray bottle.
Spending up to $10,000 a week on drugs, he lived a life of stardom, cocaine, and sex, which eventually led to his downfall.
Thomas Hollywood Henderson was a standout player for the Dallas Cowboys. Henderson represented the chaotic lifestyle of the times. He was addicted to cocaine and partying, setting him back approximately $10,000 a week. Despite this, his talent helped place him on a very good Dallas Cowboys team, winning a Super Bowl in 1977. Henderson had the world at his fingertips, but that didn't stop him from being an addict. In fact, it made things much worse. Such was Henderson's addiction that he hid inhalers spiked with liquefied cocaine in his pocket to use during games. His frequent drug abuse was bound to catch up with him, and not long after that Super Bowl appearance in 1977, Henderson's career would come to an end. The end of his career would be marked by an increasing decline in performance and continued lapses in self-discipline. However, the most disturbing incident in Henderson's life would occur after hanging up his pads.
Norris Wheat will. Oh, is he
Just 2 years after his departure from the league, Henderson was arrested for abusing 2 teenage girls, whom he had taken back to his apartment and given cocaine to in exchange for sex. He was charged with false imprisonment, sexual battery, and furnishing cocaine to a minor. This got him 28 months in prison, which thankfully helped turn him into a better person. He was one of many Dallas Cowboys superstars to find themselves on the wrong side of the law because of cocaine. But more on them later in the video.
The Washington Post is reporting the investigation stems from a recent substance abuse test in which Manley showed up positive.
The decision comes about a month after Urban was caught in a motel room with drugs, 2 women, and a former Cowboy player.
Police arrested Pro Football Hall of Famer and Williamsburg native Lawrence Taylor for drunk driving and Florida
After he
Friday.
left football, cocaine simply took over his life.
By the 1980s, cocaine had seeped its way into the mainstream population, becoming a symbol of power and status. This new glamorized outlook on the drug showed up all too clearly in the NFL. Carl Eller. In 1981, former Minnesota defensive tackle Carl Eller checked himself into a chemical abuse center for treatment because of a $2,000 a week cocaine habit. E.J. Jr. In 1983, St. Louis linebacker E.J. Jr. pled guilty to cocaine possession and was suspended for 4 games. Tony Peters. Later that year, Tony Peters, a Pro Bowl safety for Washington, was arrested in his dorm room during training camp for assisting 2 cocaine deals that summer. He pled guilty and was fined $10,000, faced 4 years probation, and was suspended from the NFL indefinitely. Mike Green. In 1985, San Diego linebacker Mike Green was arrested for cocaine possession and enrolled in a program to treat his addiction. And a few months later, Kansas City defensive end Mike Bell was indicted on cocaine-related charges. He, along with his twin brother, was charged with using a phone to acquire cocaine, for which he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. However, the most shocking storyline would center around the greatest defensive player of all time.
There's something about Lawrence Taylor that is larger than life.
We never see anybody that ferocious, that caliber.
Probably the most intimidating, the most fearsome defensive player in the history of the NFL.
Lawrence Taylor is going to be a force in this league.
However, off the field, Taylor's life would be defined by drug abuse and scandal.
He chased cocaine the way he'd chased quarterback. But as he approached retirement, he'd looked forward, he said, to going back to cocaine.
That's how powerful the drug is.
His wife divorced him, and he was arrested for buying crack in South Carolina. To beat NFL drug tests, Taylor told us his teammates would give him their urine. LT lived a life of drugs, depravity, and degradation.
Lawrence Taylor is widely regarded as one of the greatest linebackers in NFL history. He was drafted by the New York Giants in 1981, and he made his presence felt early, winning the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. Taylor was a force of nature, and his incredible on-field play quickly made him one of the premier defenders in the league, celebrating 2 Super Bowl wins. He was named the NFL MVP in 1986 and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1999. However, his legendary play on the field were equally matched by his scandalous behavior off of it. His superstar lifestyle featured heavy drug abuse and rampant partying, with Taylor also admitting to calling up to 6 prostitutes a day. It is reported that Lawrence ushered in his new NFL career with 41 beers on draft night and almost died in a speeding incident during his rookie year. This led the Giants to take out a $2 million life insurance policy on Taylor, with the GM telling the trainer that he would be surprised if he lived past 30. He has since admitted that his cocaine usage started in his 2nd season, but it wasn't until 1988 that he received his first significant suspension for failed drug tests. But soon after Taylor's retirement, his life would spiral out of control. After his career ended in 1993, Lawrence Taylor's drug usage worsened, and consequences quickly began to emerge. After 2 stints in rehab in 1995, he was arrested twice in 1996 and 97 for attempting to buy cocaine. He then was sentenced to 5 years federal probation for filing false tax returns in 2000, before finally pleading guilty to sexual misconduct and patronizing a prostitute 10 years later. After initially being charged with rape, Taylor managed to avoid jail, but was sentenced to 6 years probation and was registered as a sex offender. He will undoubtedly go down as one of the NFL's greatest players, but his cocaine-fueled lifestyle that has tainted his reputation and made his induction into the Hall of Fame a controversial one. Dexter Manley was a dominant defensive end during the 1980s, known for his explosiveness, speed, and power, earning him the nickname Secretary of Defense. He was drafted by Washington in 1981, where he quickly became a cornerstone of their defense, helping propel the team to Super Bowl glory in the 1982 and 87 seasons. Entering the NFL, Manley had never touched a drug. However, as a rookie, he was taken to a house party where veterans were freely using cocaine. He was regularly exposed to it throughout the season and saw how normalized the drug was in NFL circles. 1 year later, he met the wrong girl, and cocaine became a regular occurrence. Towards the end of the 80s, it began to catch up with him. Manley failed drug tests in 87, 88, and 89, which culminated in him being suspended for the year. Upon returning to the action, he managed to survive 1 year before getting caught up in the party atmosphere that was captivating the NFL. While out at a club with younger players, Manley couldn't resist the temptation and relapsed, despite knowing that the NFL was now testing him 3 times a week. The result would have been a 4th failed drug test and a lifetime ban, which prompted Manley to get ahead of it and retire in December 1991. However, soon, Manley's life descended further into depravity. Drugs and partying defined him, and soon the effects would be felt throughout other areas of his life. His wife would divorce him. Not long later, Manley was homeless and desperate, racking up credit card bills and being arrested multiple times. A 4-year stint in prison proved effective in the short term, but it wasn't long before Manley returned to his addiction. After 2 decades of substance abuse, Manley was finally freed of his addiction, and in an unusual way, a cyst found on his brain was removed in 2006, and with it went the addiction. Doctors have informed Manley that the cyst was on the part of the brain associated with impulse control, and his therapist has pinned the cyst as the root of his addiction. With it removed, Manley was able to return to a more normal lifestyle.
Stanley Wilson was supposed to carry the ball for the Bengals in Super Bowl 23. He scored 2 touchdowns in the team's first playoff game back in the 1988 season. As Jim Rome reports, Wilson was already a 2-time offender of the NFL's drug policy when he gave into his addiction one last time, the night before the Super Bowl.
February 1989. The Cincinnati Bengals are hours away from the Super Bowl. Their star running back, Stanley Wilson, has played a crucial role in getting them here. But something's wrong. As players and coaches prepare for a final team meeting, one man is absent. Stanley Wilson, a player with immense talent, had been here before, on the verge of greatness, only to disappear into the darkness of his personal demons. Wilson's battle with cocaine addiction was no secret. Drafted in 1983, his rookie season was cut short after just 10 games when his addiction first reared its ugly head. Rehab followed. 4 more trips would come in the following years, and by 1985, he had been suspended from the NFL, leaving him sidelined and struggling to control his life. The door creaks open as the coaches step inside, their eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering in from a window. The room is disheveled, clothes tossed carelessly, the bed unmade. Then they see him, Stanley Wilson, completely naked, sits in a corner of the room, his eyes wide and vacant. He's drenched in sweat, trembling, clearly under the influence. Empty containers and remnants of a drug binge are scattered around the floor. Coaches, initially shocked and unsure what to do, tried to help him. They attempted to calm him down, telling him they needed to get him medical attention. But Stanley, in a paranoid state, refused. When the coaches tried to escort him out to get him help, Wilson panicked. And in a moment of sheer terror and confusion, he broke free and bolted out of the hotel room, sprinting down the hall and fleeing into the night. The Bengals staff tried to follow him, but Wilson disappeared into the Miami streets, running wildly as if trying to escape his own demons. He wasn't seen again until days later, when he resurfaced at his parents' house in Miami. It was a tragic moment when his team needed him most, and instead of being on the field, he was lost in the throes of addiction. For the Bengals, this meant more than just losing a player. It meant losing hope just before the biggest game of their lives. Stanley Wilson was a big part of our game plan. His absence threw everything off balance. We had to adjust on the fly, and that hurt us. For Stanley Wilson, it was the moment when his NFL career, and perhaps his chance at redemption, slipped away for good. Darryl Henley arrived in the NFL in 1989 when he was drafted in the second round by the Los Angeles Rams. During his time as a Ram, Henley quickly got comfortable. He started partying, and before you knew it, he was out until the early hours of the morning, prioritizing lifestyle and leisure over the grind of being on an NFL team. His group of friends began to grow, and as things got steadily more raucous, drugs soon entered the equation. Alongside his burgeoning career as an NFL cornerback, it turned out that Henley was double-timing as a drug lord. He and his girlfriend, Rams cheerleader Tracy Donahoe, had been trafficking cocaine across the country, with some other members of his group also being involved. Donahoe was frequently on the road making trips with cases of cocaine, but the whole operation came crashing down when the law intervened. Donahoe mitigated her legal problems by pointing the finger directly at Darryl Henley. She would receive a lesser sentence in exchange for being a witness in the prosecution of Henley and his friends. There was a lot of controversy surrounding the trial, intensified by the recent emphasis on the war on drugs, which had led to much stricter sentences. On top of this, there was a lot of corruption throughout the trial, with one member of the jury being openly racist toward Henley, and another admitting to using amphetamines throughout the trial. While awaiting his sentencing, Henley managed to get a mobile phone smuggled into the prison. He used this phone to talk to his family and also to explore further business opportunities. At this point, Henley was appealing his conviction on the grounds of the racial bias and corruption surrounding the trial, but had spent all his money. On the phone, he spoke with a member of the mafia called Joey Gambino, who offered him a stake in a lucrative heroin deal that was going down. Henley accepted, something he has since reflected on by saying, "I did it purely for the money. I had a baby daughter. My family was broke." He said he was doing it because he wanted to fight the verdict. But what would happen next would be absolutely shocking. Due to Henley not having any money up front to pay into the deal, Gambino and Henley had to come up with an arrangement. As part of this, it was agreed that Gambino would murder the judge on Henley's case, and his former girlfriend and key witness, Tracy Donahoe. He would then take the fee from Henley's impending drug deal winnings, and Henley could avoid paying anything up front. Aside from the fact that Henley was engaging with a hitman, there was a bigger problem facing Darryl Henley. As it turns out, Joey Gambino wasn't actually a mafia member. He wasn't even called Joey Gambino, and he was in fact an undercover DEA agent. There are some question marks surrounding why Henley was set up in the way that he was, and whether the whole situation was the very definition of entrapment. But the reality is, you can't expect to get away with employing someone to murder 2 people. Henley was initially given 21 years for the drug trial, which was then increased to 41 years because of the attempted murder plot. He is still serving them today and is due to be released in 2036.
Your Cowboys are still champions.
Cowboys win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. Creatures of habit, and their habit is with you.
Yeah, well, was some shit called the White House. The story was great about this White House.
The White House was about to be exposed.
Shut down the White House.
Lots and lots of when players continued to frequent the White House and see.
There were times when you went in there and it was like a scene out of a movie. I knew it wasn't right, but at the time we were winning. It seemed like nothing could go wrong.
The Dallas Cowboys defined the 1990s. Having already been dubbed America's team, Dallas took their fandom to new heights by reaching the playoffs in every season between 1991 and 96 and winning the Super Bowl 3 times. On the field, they were producing one of the NFL's greatest dynasties. However, what happened off the field was truly shocking. The Cowboys knew how to celebrate their success, and whether it was through a lack of care or a sense of invincibility, they took it a bit too far. Michael Irvin was the leader of the group, and the primary destination for the Cowboys celebrations was the infamous White House. This White House was hidden away near the practice facility, and if walls could talk, it would tell you about a wide range of raucous and illegal activities. Michael Irvin was named the president of this White House. His White House was a 2-story home tucked away in a cul-de-sac near the team's facility. It featured 5 bedrooms, large screen TVs, a pool table, and a wet bar. However, the players wanted to do more than just relax. They wanted to party, and for that, they wanted girls and drugs. Irvin and his former personal assistant would go out after practice to find girls to bring back to the parties. And when things got underway, there was plenty of cocaine flowing around the house. Somehow, the White House remained private, with players' partners being kept in the dark, and local media either shut out or persuaded to keep their mouths shut. However, all good things must come to an end, and it did so quickly for both Michael Irvin and his White House. Not long after the successful Super Bowl winning campaign of 1995, Michael Irvin was found in a hotel room with 2 women, marijuana and cocaine. For this, he would ultimately be fined $10,000 and sentenced to 800 hours of community service, in addition being suspended for the first 5 games of the 96 season. Coinciding with his sentencing was another significant finding, the emergence of the White House. As the Cowboys players got more comfortable with the rule breaking and partying, they began to welcome more and more people into the White House. These newcomers had less of a reason to keep the White House's existence quiet, leading to an investigative report landing in the local paper. Irvin had to come clean to Jerry Jones, and the players' popular party spot was no more. The revelations of the White House, in addition to the arrest, sent shockwaves around the NFL. The Golden Boys of football, America's team, were revealed to be a coke-fueled group of partygoers who were challenging the very nickname they had been given. The Cowboys have had a long and checkered history in the NFL, riddled with scandal over various decades, which I broke down in a recent video, which you can watch here. One of the most significant cases of criminality from those Dallas Cowboys came from Sam Hurd, who went undrafted in 2006 but managed to stick around with the team as a backup receiver and special teams player. He managed to leverage this into a 3-year contract with the Chicago Bears, but off-field issues would derail his career. Unbeknownst to almost everyone, Sam Hurd was not just a backup receiver and special teams player. He was living a double life as a drug lord. And in the early stages of his career in Chicago, he was being tracked by undercover agents. These agents had been closely following him for months, gathering evidence that proved he was responsible for a large-scale drug trafficking organization. He was arrested in a steakhouse in Chicago in 2011 after attempting to buy a kilogram of cocaine from people who turned out to be undercover officers. Those undercover agents had learned that Heard planned to distribute 5 to 10 kilograms of cocaine and 1,000 pounds of marijuana per week. Heard faced a recommended 27 to 34 years in prison, but luckily received a much reduced sentence of 15 years. According to the judge, this was because a lot of the case against Heard was based on agreements to sell drugs rather than physical transactions. His case is another reminder that some NFL players do the inexplicable when they have the world at their fingertips. Many players fell into the culture of addiction and criminality. Whether this was due to the immense pressure of the NFL or a sense of invincibility, what is clear is that cocaine addiction rarely ends well. Over time, the NFL has slowly gotten to grips with it through new testing measures and improved rehabilitation processes, which have led to a safer environment for players and a better image for the league.